Hello, beautiful people. You are listening to the Communal Table podcast, part of Food and Wine Pro. I am your host, Kat Kinsman, senior editor at Food and Wine. And my guest today, I am obsessed with his restaurants. I wish I had like a baseball card collection of all of these. They're each special in a different kind of way. I think of him as one of the kings of Chicago, which is no small feat because Chicago is an incredible restaurant town. And I asked for the proper pronunciation before you came here because I've heard it said so many times.
Kahan.
Yes, welcome, Paul Kahan. I did ask ahead of time because I've heard Kahan, I've heard all these different things, but
I don't correct people anymore. I don't care.
Welcome to New York.
Yeah,
I know.
Super thrilled to be here.
Yeah, so you are here. You have a new cookbook out.
Cooking for Good Times.
Tell me about your good times.
Well, you know, it's very loosely based on the cuisine of Avec, but really,
God, I love Avec.
really what it's all about. Yeah, you and I'll be working at the Publican, and I'll go up to a table and check in with them, and they'll say, dinner was really great, but we love Avec.
It's hard to get in.
And no, it's not.
Well, if you're there during James Beard weekend,
Yeah.
It is really hard to get in.
And then I say, well, I love Avec too. It's my restaurant. And they say, no, we really love Avec. They're kind of zombies a little bit.
I have a friend who is a restaurant publicist in Chicago, and he and his boyfriend have the Avec rule. For restaurants, they'll go once and they're like, would I rather eat there or Avec? And like, the thing is, like, it's always like, no, we'd just rather spend that money at Avec.
Yeah,
So-
well, Avec was really based on this seminal experience for me the first time that I ever went to Europe. Long story, but my wife was in a huge motorcycle accident in France before I met her.
Oh, wow.
And she convalesced. The guy she was with was from a town in the high Swiss Alps called Geiss. And it's literally like, you know, giant snow-capped peaks out your window, a really beautiful place. And our friends live in this 400-year-old farmhouse. So we flew into Switzerland. She picked us up. She opened up a split of champagne in the car. It was an hour drive. By the time we got to the house, we were a little popped up. And then we sat around. She has a hearth where they cook food in the kitchen, and we sat around the hearth cooking food and drinking. And literally it was this procession of my wife's greatest friends that she spent months and months with,
Wow.
you know, in a past life. And I was like, this is an incredible idea for a restaurant. It was just about friends and wine, and I was kind of jet lagged, delirious, kind of felt like I was on an acid trip.
Though.
It was
Those
the best.
meals when you're not quite sure what time it is or where you are, you just know good stuff is afoot.
And time was not a part of the equation. It was like, okay, let's cook, let's make some gratinade leeks in the oven. Let's do this, let's do that. And it was just like the way that I love to eat, and turned into a restaurant. And that's kind of what the book is about. It's about like how to entertain, it's about how to be a successful host, which means how to have a lot of fun, and how, when your guests come over, how to open up a bottle of wine. And, you know, the first chapter is food to eat while you're cooking. And that should be that should be the extent of, you know, the hard work.
Yeah.
You know, people that get those cookbooks and they try to recreate all this crazy shit and it turns into a nightmare. That's not what it's about.
Because you're not a happy host if you're doing that, if you're fussing over too many little things. Like you need to be together. And
yeah, I just want to go to some good parties.
yeah, I mean, the thing that struck me too is, you know, this is the Communal Table podcast, like sitting at that communal table at Avec, and I was sitting there with a couple of other people, and I kept thinking, why does this guy look so familiar who was sitting nearby? And I was like not staring or whatever, and at the end of it, somebody whispered to me, oh, that's Tony Goldwyn, who plays the president on Scandal. Was like sitting right across from me. I was thinking, like, is he somebody I went to college with? Is it? But as I was walking out, I saw a former colleague of mine too. So it's a magnet for. I will note a former colleague who has great taste in restaurants. So
Nice.
I ended up actually writing about that meal. Now that I think about it, I did one of those Grub Street Diaries for a New York magazine, and I remember I was there with Marion Bull, food writer, and Matt Taylor Gross, who was at Saveur as a photographer at that time. And I remember we were ordering it, and they called our order aggressive, but we were like, we're not going to stop. I think we got everything. It was, I just wobbled out of there feeling like full and happy on all different kinds of levels.
Yeah, that's great. You know, I've wandered through there and seen like a cat like Bobby Flay sitting at the counter, and I sit down with him, and I've known him for a long time. And, you know, I'm a humble guy. I'm like, what are you doing in here? And he's like, I love this place. And I'm like, well, that makes me feel really great. Thank you.
Well, okay, I want to talk through, you have a lot of restaurants, and they each have vastly different feels. So could you go through the laundry list of the restaurants?
Sure. The first one is Blackbird. It's 23. Avec is, I probably won't get it right, but Avec is 15 or 16 now. And then it gets a little confusing for me.
Right.
I think my business partners and I'm involved. We opened up the Violet Hour,
Oh,
our cocktail
Beautiful
bar.
place.
And then the Publican, and then Big Star, and then Publican Quality Meats maybe, and then subsequently after that Publican Quality Bread, and then it gets I don't even know anymore. We have Café Cancale is our newest. It's a sort of a French neo-bistro, seafood neo-bistro. It's really cool. What did I miss? Anyways, I'm sure I missed something and I'm going to get yelled at. But there's 11.
Wait, is Dove's yours?
Oh, yeah, Dove's Luncheonette. Sorry.
Right. So I've been to all of those up through Butcher, and I have been to Dove's. And it's weird because I keep thinking, like, as you mentioned, each one of those, I have an emotional moment that happened at each one of those. I'm thinking Blackbird, the first time I went there, I was in town. We were, I was working at CNN at the time, and we would do these secret suppers, and we would invite people and not tell them exactly what was happening, just be ready for dinner one night and not who was cooking or anything. And we threw one at Hamaro Kantu's place. And he ended up having like Hot Doug in there, and Mindy Siegel and Matt Merges cooking as
cool.
well. And it was such a beautiful Chicago experience. And I was in town for another day or two. And I ended up getting to go to Blackbird. And it was just, I was there with colleagues. I was calm because we were done with our mission, and it was such a beautiful expression of hospitality.
Yay!
Yeah, and then I went to Alinea later in that visit too. So I'm like, dang, Chicago, what's up? This is a
Nice.
fantastic thing, and it was just a really special thing, and it felt like a quieter energy than some of the other places. And you said, and that was the first one, right?
Yeah, recently I've had a couple chefs, important guys, young men in Chicago, in this case young men, that have both pulled me aside and said, I'm cooking in Chicago because of you.
Yeah.
I'm like, holy mackerel, that's a lot to swallow. I mean, it made me feel great, a little uneasy, but they just said, I came to Blackbird and just had this amazing experience, and I wanted to cook in Chicago, or it made me want to cook the way that I do. And boy, that's just, I can go to sleep right now.
I want to see the family tree of this place too, and actually out of your whole group, because
Yeah.
I'm thinking of like all the fantastic people who've come out of it. Dana Cree.
Oh my God. Have you been to Pretty Cool?
So I can't eat ice cream these days. I have a gut thing, but I love and admire her, and she's actually the neighbor of a friend of mine, and so I've gotten to like meet the little baby and like and walk by Pretty Cool, and it is pretty cool.
Have you met her dog?
I have heard about the dog.
Corgi.
I have a friend who stalks her dog, actually.
If I were a dog, I'd be a Corgi.
I mean, they seem to like they belong to royalty. They're low riders.
I just have really short legs. But
I mean, she does such tremendous ice cream work, and I think it's such a special thing. And I know when she was experimenting with some things at Dove's, like she had a late night ice cream party there. But also, I had an emotional moment at
nice.
Big Star. I've been there a bunch of times, sort of after James Beard parties and stuff, and get to really celebrate with people. I was there actually after the loss of Josh Ozersky, and so I was mourning there as well. And but we're going to get to Publican now, because I'm going to tell you why that is my heaven and hell restaurant.
Okay.
The food, I'll just note up front, the food is amazing. I think of that chicken that is there, and it's a tremendous thing. I have so I was diagnosed last year with ADHD, and I don't do well in crowded, busy spaces.
Yeah, me either.
Yeah. So those central tables, like the way I process information around me, if I see bodies and things like that, my brain starts to spark and shut down. But around the edges, can we explain the seats around the edges with the little doors?
Yeah, people call them pig pens, which they're really not. To research that restaurant, myself and my wife Mary and our architect, my great friend Thomas Schlesser, and his wife Claire, they work together. They're based out of New York City. They probably have designed a lot of restaurants you've been. They've designed all but one of our restaurants. I think he's won 4 or 5 James Beard Awards for design. Blackbird, Avec, Publican, all won design awards. But those were based on like pubs in Belgium, where back in the old days, they had a separate seating area for women and men.
Oh, wow.
They were segregated.
Okay.
And we just thought the aesthetic was really cool. We didn't want to segregate anyone. And some people like the pens. Some people hate them. They actually have swinging doors, so you get in and close the doors, and they're enclosed. They're made out of American walnut. They're real pretty and real nicely worn.
I feel so safe in them. I know that's such a silly thing to say, but once the door is shut on one of those, and it's not like you can't see out of the top or anything like that. It's probably, is it like shoulder height or something like that when you're sitting down?
Yeah.
And it's being public and private at the same time, and you don't have to worry about really anything, and food comes to you in this, and it feels so tucked in and safe, and it was
Nice.
And just my serotonin levels are really good when I'm in there, and I'm sort of looking over at the communal things and thinking like it's just such this polarity for me.
I mean, the big tables were inspired by The Last Supper. That the image of all those dudes sitting at the big table was where that kind of came from.
And I have sat at the big table, and that sitting at the big tables is fine. It's those stand-up tables that I'm like,
Yeah.
But I've had some really great communal meals at those those bigger tables as well, and I think those are really great. But the thing that I note when I go there, it's a place that chefs want to go to,
Yep.
and that's got to feel really,
It does.
really good. There's a dish I keep thinking of, it's like a roast chicken and fries, right?
Yeah, that was inspired from my business partner Donnie and I went to eat in Montreal, and we went to one of these piri chicken shacks. It was written up in a food magazine that no longer exists, and I think it was in Gourmet.
I was assuming, yeah.
And we went there and we sat at the counter, and I was like, man, this is good, and I think I can do it better. We asked the guy what was in it, and he said, if I told you, I'd have to kill you. And of course, he was smoking a cigarette and grilling chickens at the same time.
So it's a little bit of ash.
It was that kind of place. But they're, I mean, we kind of defined the ingredients that we want to work with at the Publican, and a big one, we just were in love with Espelette pepper when we opened that restaurant, and it's a magical ingredient. And so, olive oil, garlic, lemon, I mean, that's what defines that restaurant. Maybe that's why chefs want to eat there. It's like the Cooking for Good Times is, I think, a cookbook based on what chefs want to eat, not what they want to necessarily cook at their restaurants, I hope. And we try to just cook real good, honest food at the Publican, using really, really great ingredients. Like I would put our ingredients on par with or better than, honestly, any restaurant in the country. And there's a few that are, have their own farms and such, but we, spend the prime dollar, bring in ingredients from, Monterey-based seafood, and from, we eliminate the middleman. We get super special stuff, super fresh, and try not to do a lot to it. And so ultimately, I just think it's very flavorful, delicious food, but not pretentious, I hope.
It's so shareable too. I feel like I can get my hands in there when I go there and get greasy, and it's a really beautiful thing. It's just, I'm just so struck by the emotional differences between each kind of experience, and you go into these with a longtime partner. So I'm always so fascinated by long partnerships in the restaurant industry.
Yeah.
So talk through, if you don't mind, how that all came together.
How I met my partner, Donnie?
Yeah.
I was the chef at a restaurant. One of my mentors, his name was Erwin Dreschler, and I actually left. I worked for Rick Bayless for a long stint, and left that kitchen because ultimately I didn't want to cook Mexican food anymore. I love Mexican food, but I felt like it was cheating. It's so easy to make it so delicious.
It's good stuff.
Chilies, all the whatever.
The palette of spices that you can use is so varied and beautiful.
Yeah, it's great food, amazing food. That Rene Redzepi is embracing Mexican cooking now tells you how cool Mexican food is.
Good God, it's such a good cuisine.
Yeah. But that being said, Donnie was a regular customer at the restaurant I worked at, and he, was looking around the West Loop in Chicago for a property. He wanted to open a restaurant. He really came from a club background.
Oh, I didn't know that. What was he involved in before that?
He just worked at clubs, China Club, and
oh wow,
the Funky Buddha Lounge, and he was a door guy.
Was he a New York guy?
No, Chicago.
Oh, I didn't know there was one.
There was a China Club in Chicago. Yeah.
Oh yeah, the one here I think closed recently.
I think the one in Chicago closed a long time ago. But anyways, he wanted to get out of that racket and open up a restaurant. And I think we ended up partnering because I was willing to work for nothing.
Yeah, that's how it happens sometimes.
It was a time in my life where my wife was in non-for-profit healthcare, and she had just gotten her master's and got a really high-powered, 6-figure job, and she's like, "Go for it, do what you want."
Awesome.
Yeah, and I left that job, and I actually rode freight trains around the country for about a month.
Wait, okay, back up.
It was my. I met a guy in college. We were winter camping, and he asked me. He goes, "You want to go freight hopping with me this summer? I do it all the time." And I said, "Absolutely." And so I did it with this guy Bill 3 times.
Oh, wait, okay.
All over the country.
So what were your trajectories for this?
The first trip was from Chicago to Minneapolis through the Northern Rockies. We got kicked off in Spokane, Washington.
Okay, so do you really, like you see in the movies, like run and hop on a train?
You do. It depends. There was one point where, and we had backpacks, there was one point where my buddies were in the car, and I was running to catch up and literally fell to my knees with a 40-pound backpack on my back on those giant rocks that are next to railroad tracks, and I still made it. They were getting ready to jump off, but I made it.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so what kind of footwear do you wear for this? Like, and do you have, okay, I was picturing like with the stick and the bundle.
No stick and no bundle. I think I was wearing Adidas. What were the green and white ones with the rubber that wrapped around the front?
Shell toes?
Maybe they're called the cross country, I think.
You and Run DMC.
Yeah. Anyways, so I met Donnie there, and we there was a coffee shop that I loved, and I said, "Hey, let's meet there." And he had a partner, former business partner of mine. He actually passed away last year, Rick DeArmond.
I'm so sorry.
Sadly.
Yeah.
But the 3 of us met there, and I remember I rode my bike. It was winter. It's just my MO.
And that's no joke in Chicago.
Yeah, and I saw this old Pontiac Sunbird driving around looking for a parking spot. I thought, it doesn't seem like the car that dude would drive. And then he got out and was wearing probably the most, I don't know if you've ever met my partner Donnie, but he is
so dapper.
One of the most stylish men in America. And
Truly.
he got out of this silver or gold Pontiac Sunbird, which was his mom's car, because he was selling everything that he owned in order to open up this restaurant.
Oh my goodness.
But of course he had a beautiful suit on. And then I watched this 1967 banana yellow Buick Wildcat cruising around the neighborhood with literally a greaser behind the wheel. Black hair, swept back, wraparound sunglasses, smoking a cigarette. And I'm like, this better not be the other guy. And of course, that was the other guy. And that's where our partnership started. And I think at the end of that meeting, I said, okay, I'll go into partnership with you guys, but I'm not going to hang out with you. Which is a line that will, goes down in history because
oh my God.
Donnie and I are 23 years in, almost 24 years in. But I think to address your question of how, I mean, it's interesting because we formed a new partnership with 2 young men, incredibly talented, Erling Wubauer and Josh Childen. They opened up Pacific Standard Time and a rooftop called the Laurel Room, and they are our new partners, and their company is called Underscore. Ours is called One Off. And I often find myself telling them when we're in discussions, there were times where Donnie had to talk me off the cliff, where I was so ready to quit. Something that's long-lasting and has a really high level of trust. I said, you know what? Think about the relationship with your wife.
Yes.
And think about it's no different. I mean, I've been with my wife, I think, 36 years, and there are good times and there are bad times, and you have to.
It's an arc.
Yeah.
Or actually, it's a roller coaster. It's a something, but it's.
And you learn and you mature and you learn lessons and you go to therapy and you figure it out. And so we're learning a lot, and we're not perfect and they're not perfect, and we just have to continue to work through issues and be open and communicate at a really high level, which is impossible. You have to continually push, communicate. Everything that you do and see that might relate to our lives over here at this other restaurant, make sure you tell us about it. Make sure you share that with us. And so, it's been with Donnie. It's been interesting. He's chef. Everyone wants to hear about the chef, and the idea is the chef. They're Paul Kahn's restaurants, and it took a really long. And I just answer people's questions, but he taught me that we're a partnership and we do these things together. No single individual is greater than the sum of the parts. That please mention me. because it's important to me.
Yes.
And knowing that it's important to him, I started to make an effort and make even a greater effort. And he wants, he thrives on the attention. I'm the opposite. I'd rather crawl into a cave. And so it's always been this huge conundrum for me. But it's just, getting to know him better, getting to know what's important to him. He just put on the Welcome Conference in Chicago with...
Oh, yes, we did we are continuing to do a bunch of coverage about it because I think it's such a fantastic thing. I love hearing about how people operate front of house and also behind the scenes. To me, it's gotten short shrift.
Yeah.
Hospitality definitely has, but
Yeah,
with all your restaurants, it's the food and it's the feeling of the whole thing. It's
awesome.
so important.
Thank you. Yeah. So anyways, it's a relationship that continues to grow every day, and I don't agree with a lot of things he says and does, and we talk about them, or we don't, or I realize it's just not necessary to talk about it. I'm going to let him go with that. It's all good. It's establishing that high level of trust. It's no different than, like I said, I really equate it to my relationship with my wife and how hard you have to work at it in order for it to be good. That's really it.
I've heard that analogy so many times from people with these long-standing restaurant partnerships because you probably spend more time. I mean, like in some of these restaurants, but you spend more time with the partner of it. I had Michelle Bailey and Gianno Morosano in here, and they were talking through their relationship with the Gray and the new place that they've opened, and they were saying they basically had to learn how to fight productively. It's such an interesting thing.
That's right on. Yeah, oftentimes I call it wrestler mentality. I was a grappler from the time I was like 7 all the way to college, a competitive wrestler. And I learned a lot of lessons from it, but mostly I learned you get cracked in the head and you see stars and you're lying on the ground, you just got to get up and just keep pushing forward. And, I think about food that way. I don't profess to be this wizard of cuisine. I have, I think, passionate ideas of how food should taste, and I think I'm a soulful cook. But I try something, if it doesn't work, I try it again, and I try it 50 times until I think it's really good.
Are you allowed in your relationship to give feedback on the other parts? Do you come in front of the house? Does he come in on the food, or do you sort of divide and conquer? How's that go?
There was a period there where it's like, well, if you're going to talk about that, I'm going to talk about that. Well, they didn't like that dish. Well, you think the service was bad. There are no boundaries at this point.
Yeah.
I think I'll jump on the floor and motivate, and for me mostly it's like just be as nice as you can, and let them know that you love what you're doing and you're excited to have them in our home, basically. Yeah. And I think I do a good job conveying that. And Donnie really, he loves to get back when we're doing events and plate food, and it's not a problem at this point.
That's really, really nice. And to take the relationship metaphor a little bit further, do you fight in front of the kids? When you do have conflict or differences of opinion, whatever it is, do you express that in front of other team members, or is that a thing that's done in private?
There in the early days, there were holes in doors, broken chairs, you name it.
Right.
We've matured, and we do disagree. We have meetings with 10 people in a room, and I think we openly we know how to criticize creatively. Positively at this point in our relationship.
It's so important, and it's such good behavior to model in front of other people now, because I'm also so fascinated in mentorship and how torches get passed down, and there is this incredible generation of cooks coming up, and it's funny. I think you and I probably aren't that far off in age, and I think we're sort of in the middle of this stuff where there are people who are our mentors.
I think I'm older than you think.
I'm 47.
I got you by 10 years.
Okay. You must moisturize or something.
Moisturize, it's key.
It's really important. But I'm always so interested in the people who are, relevant, been doing it a long time, still relevant, but still look to the sort of the people. We're doing this thing at Food Mind where we're looking at this generation of chefs who are in their 60s and 70s and stuff and still kicking it. And then the people who are sort of coming next. But there's something that each generation learns. And it feels like now a lot of the rules are being rewritten about people's interaction.
Love it.
Because we really did, hit a point over the last few years where a lot of things became unacceptable. You know, we were talking before we got on mic that I have, and I think by the time this comes out, this will be public due to a big profile of Rocco DiSpirito, who was in your Best New Chefs class. And we were talking through
Best
a lot
class
of...
ever.
It's such a good class.
Sorry.
Really is such a great
Sorry.
class. It was great. We actually had him come in for this mentorship lunch that we did with the 2019 class. And it was really cool because we had a 1999 person, a 2009 person, and then this 2019 class who were all sitting there like deer in the headlights. It was kind of wonderful to see that happen. But we were talking about how those things have changed because he was somebody who I would hear of him as a yeller and all this kind of stuff. And you see him now and he's just he's chill. He knows who he is and what he's doing, but he had to go through this reckoning of, that change. Like you can't just yell at people anymore. You definitely other kind of things. How have you seen this kitchen culture change and what have you had to adapt in your restaurants?
Yeah, I mean, I think I want to start with that answer and we'll loop around to it, but I think I want to start it with humility.
Yeah.
Being, for me, the most important part of me as a person and as a chef and as a restaurateur. I feel like so many people let their egos get the best of them. It's just out of control. And for me, I try to, balance in life is super important. I like music as much as I like food.
Oh, we're going to talk about that.
I like my wife more than the two previous. I love to fish, and I love modern design, and there's so many things that I'm really enthusiastic about. But that balance and humility and figuring out what's right for our businesses and for me and for my partners has been really important. But that being said. I lost track of the question. Sorry.
The change in culture. No, the change in culture.
Yeah. So that being said, I feel like I've always, the culture of our kitchens, like, and we're not perfect. We have 1,200 employees now, and things go wrong. People make mistakes, but the culture does come from the top. And my example has always been, a quiet leader. Motivate with positive energy and through teaching, no sexism, racism, any ism allowed at all in our kitchen, in our company, period. We have we've always had a zero tolerance policy, and we've had our Me Too issues, and we react swiftly and for the safety and for the sake of everyone involved. And so we feel like we've really set the bar as to how a large group can deal with issues. Yeah,
because I actually reached out to all of you when a bunch of stuff was breaking because you had an incident there, but I reached out and the thing I was actually really happy about it. Like I got immediate response from that, and here is our employee handbook. Here are our guides and stuff, and here's how we're dealing with this situation. And there was pretty swift resolution to things too, but I really
super swift.
Yeah, and I was really heartened to see that because it was right when a whole lot of stuff was happening around the country.
Shit was hitting the fan.
Really was, and I think it will continue to. Also around the country.
I would agree, but again, I feel like I think all those things, male, female, whatever, I think all that haywire, all that crap that has happened for so long in kitchens, a lot of it is ego, a lot of it is substance abuse, and on and on and on. And that's not our culture. Yeah. I like to have a cold beer as much as the next guy or, whatever. But professionally, lead like a professional. And I think humility is a really big part of that. I just, I see, when I'm running around town with Mr. X, Miss Y, and Mr. Z, all really incredible chefs that are recognized by people on the street. It's interesting to see different people react differently. Some people, they just light up and they just have this, you could see that they live for that. Other people are incredibly hospitable and they deal with it and they deal with it well. And other people are monsters.
It's true.
And I just I'm just an observer in the back. And I think all those different personality types and all that crap over the years has sort of led us to the road where we're at in our business now.
Well, again, looking at that class that you came from and doing this interview with Rocco, he was talking about the sort of crucible of the late 90s, early 2000s, and this was especially in New York cooking, but everybody realizing, to get butts in seats, there's so much competition, so you do have to go out, or, a lot of people thought, like, I do have to go out and be in the gossip things. I have to do, early reality television. I have to do all of these other things. And some people took that route, and other people were like, yeah, no, not for me. And it's been really interesting to see who has been shaped, who has been warped, who has opted out of that. And
that kitchen in that era was like a rough, there's still this this kitchen culture, and I don't know if it's correct politically, morally, but there are these negative kitchens out there where they sort of survive on fear.
Yeah.
And a lot of the real high-end kitchens are just all about, like, guys, people mess with their mise en place, they hide stuff, they make it hard on people within their own team.
Oh,
and to me, I've always been like, that is just the most inane nonsense ever. Mm-hmm. We're all here to work together, to do something great, to have a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. Isn't that what it's all about?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have, nor do I want 3 Michelin stars.
Mm-hmm. That's too much pressure.
Yeah, come on,
that
man.
Seems awful. Like,
yeah,
really.
And I know there's people out there that are saying, well, if he could get 3 Michelin stars, he'd want them. I really don't.
Well, the thing is, like, I've been lucky enough to, like, eat at a lot of Michelin star places and stuff, and I was thinking, do I want to be back at Avec? Yeah. I mean, the fact that, like, that's a benchmark for so many friends of mine. Like, where do I want to be spending my time and money? Avec. And I think of, it's weird. It is such a palpable feeling of being at Publican in that shut little booth there, or on the patio at Big Star, having a margarita and some guacamole out there.
Yeah.
It's there's tremendous comfort to that, and, like, you can't star that. You can't star a feeling, I guess.
Yeah, when the Michelin Guide was the first year it was in Chicago, which, by the way, Blackbird, we have 8 Michelin stars. 8 years in a row, one each year.
Wow. That's pretty great.
We don't have 3, we have 8, man.
Does it still have a Michelin star?
Oh, yeah.
That's amazing.
And I said to the inspector, whoever it was, when they called me this year on the phone, every year I've been like, yeah, whatever. Mm-hmm. Thanks a lot. Bye. Have a good day. This year I was like, I'm really proud that we've gotten 8. Every year that they've been in Chicago, we've gotten a star. And to be honest, we really don't want 2. Because 2 stars is the kiss of death in Chicago.
Really? Is that a thing?
It has been. I think we may have moved past that. But for many years, every place that got 2 stars closed. And there's a long line of them.
Oh, golly.
It's sort of that, like, you can go there and it's reasonable and accessible to, it no longer is. But it's not Alinea. It's not 3 stars. Mm-hmm. But that being said, yeah, I don't know where I'm going. Another
no
dead
Michelin
end.
stars for you.
No Michelin stars for you.
Just the Blackbird ones too. But I think it's interesting to find out the goals of for why people are in the business. Some people really want that Michelin star. Did you see that god awful movie with Bradley Cooper?
I did.
Oh God, I'm going for the 3rd. Like, first of all, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
And second of all, like, that. God, that was an embarrassing movie.
Yeah, I know I'm going to get in trouble, but that just makes me not want to hang out with restaurant people even more seeing that movie.
So we were talking about this, about the balance of it, and maintaining that. You were saying, 23 years ago or 24 years ago, you're saying, like, I'll go into business with you, but I won't hang out with you.
Yeah.
You have a whole other life.
Big time.
Yeah. Talk to me about that. You said music's a big part of it.
Well, the music's always been a huge part of my life. I mean, when I was a kid, I was a wrestler, and I built amplifier and preamplifier kits, and was big into collecting records from a very early age. And I think Jonathan Waxman just asked me how many records I have, and I think I probably have. I'm starting to sell back, but I think I have about 8,000 records now.
Whoa.
And across all genres.
Okay.
I like classical music. I'll go to the Sinfonietta or the symphony occasionally, but I'm not a huge classical fan. Mm-hmm. But really deep into jazz, really deep into pretty much all alternative rock. Like, I'm really bummed out that for the new cookbook, one of the blurbs that someone wrote, I think we ended up with Michael Simon and Christina Tosi as the blurbs that the editor kept. But the 2 that I was most excited about, one was Georgia from Yola Tango.
Oh my God.
And she wrote a wonderful, they're insane food people. Like the first time they came in the Publican, I was like, I have seen you guys like 30 times so far in my life.
Yeah.
And you guys can order the whole menu and you're not paying. It was like such a
God.
seminal moment for me.
Love them. And I had autumn sweater going through my head recently because we've moved into autumn sweater season.
Nice. And then the other one was Andy Ricker. I don't know if you know this about Andy.
No.
I mean, number one, if you haven't had him on here, you should, because he's
so smart.
a spectacular human being.
Yes. True.
Him and I went on a mandate a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
We had like known each other, and he's like, I'm coming to Chicago, let's get some dinner, let's get a beer. And we went to this place called Kimski, which is a Polish, it's a fusion place. It's Polish and I can't figure it out, but Thai or what? No, I don't know. But regardless, we talked about food for like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then he said, "Can I show you some pictures of my cats?" He's a huge cat person.
Oh my God! Did he have good cats?
Polish and Korean.
Okay. Oh wow! Imagining dumplings is the first place my head goes.
Yeah, Kimski. He has good cats, and
sense.
he loves his cats, and so the editor of my cookbook works with Andy as well, and she's like, "Why don't you have Andy do a blurb through the eyes of his cat?" And so Andy wrote this
kidding me? That's amazing.
book blurb. I should do them as outtakes somewhere because they were both really great, but they didn't end up on the book. But blah blah blah. Not one to hang out. Oh, music.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for the early part of my career, part of my survival was I'd cook like a fiend, and then I'd shoot out to a rock show, meet my buddies, drink a couple beers, watch the show, and it was just an incredible escape.
It's such a good music city too, because like Wax Trax is there, and that they put out so much of the music that I started listening to in college, and still really, really love all the industrial stuff. Makes me really happy.
Yeah, for like the really formative part of my career, the place to go was called Lounge Axe, and actually the woman that owned Lounge Axe is married to Jeff Tweedy.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and just saw everyone and every band there, and I think Lounge Axe probably held about maybe 200 or 250 people, and that was what I did, and I got to the point where it's like a lesson that I give cooks. I'm like, hey, when the last plate of the night goes out, I used to just wipe the top of my station down with a rag, and I was out.
Yeah.
And it was because I wanted to get out to the rock show. Yeah. So I was organized enough. Everything was already wrapped, put away, ready to go, and I just shot out the door.
I've been to 2 shows in the last week, and going out, it just makes me realize, like, I need to go out even more. I saw Orville Peck, who... he just kills me. It's sort of like alternative punk rock country music. And
awesome, perfect.
He wears a mask and nobody knows his real identity. Well, I mean, they figured it out, but he was like in all these punk bands in Canada, but sings like Roy Orbison. It's amazing. And then I saw the Max Richter Orchestra over the weekend too. And it was just like, I have to remember to do this and buy tickets for stuff. And then once I've spent the money, I have to show up. So
yeah, I mean, at this point, that evil 3-letter word "old" slows me down a little bit with shows.
The knees,
just everything. It's like really they come on at 11:30. I want to be sleeping by then.
It's so exhausting.
So I've turned to other things that I'm really passionate about. Fishing.
Yeah.
Our home up north in northern Wisconsin I just spend like most of my waking hours thinking about how beautiful it is, how peaceful it is, how I love to cook there more than anything. I love to But my new hobby is Japanese food.
Really? What are you making?
Well, the house is a late prairie school house in the middle of these in the middle of the Ottawa National Forest. It was some guy's vision, and he built it. And so it really has a very sort of Scandi Japanese feel to it.
Oh, wow.
It's in the new book a lot. That was my ploy. I'll do this book so I can go up there and cook.
Right.
And so I've got Denabis, and I mean the simplest easy thing is our hot pots.
Yes.
We make a ton of hot pots, but the foraging's incredible. There's more ramps than you could ever get your hands on. And
oh wow!
Crazy wild mushrooms, and so dumpling, just everything. Just about every Japanese cookbook I can get, I'm ripping through and making, just bring tons of supplies up there and just cook Japanese meals for for our friends.
So do you like cooking when you're not at the restaurant? Do you mind cooking for friends?
I actually love it.
That's kind of great.
That focus that as a chef in a restaurant you rarely get, to stand in front of your station or a cutting board and focus on an entire meal for 3-4 hours in the afternoon, set everything up, and then finish the meal is like, I'm like, I know why I love cooking so much. I don't get to do this often enough.
That's really, really nice. And you get to feed people you love, which is a really huge thing. Because I talk to some chefs, they're like, last thing I want to do is cook like on my day off. But if they're cooking for friends, it's a totally different matter. And like, do you cook for, so you were saying you don't hang out with all the other chefs and stuff, but when chefs cook for each other, I kind of love that.
Yep.
Because there's both a casual thing to it, but then and also this sort of like, I have to do it.
Well, the only chefs that I've had up there, I mentioned Jonathan Waxman, who's a great friend of mine.
Talk about another good chicken cooker.
and mentor.
Yeah.
Him and his son came up and we had a ball.
Yeah.
And, everyone, I've done many events with him, and I've eaten at Barbuto many times, and I think he's an incredible chef. And when we were cooking up in the woods, I was like, man, I know why this guy's a legend. He can really cook.
Oh, man.
And then Ryan Pfeiffer, who's the executive chef now, the first non-chef de cuisine. We made him the executive chef at Blackbird because he's a real visionary. He came up this summer, and we cooked and we had a ball. He loves Japanese food as well, so we collaborated on a Japanese meal. It was super duper fun.
Fly on the wall kind of stuff.
How about it?
So amazing. But because the particular time that you started out in the kitchen and stuff, I want to talk through this because I'm sure that you've seen a lot of this. There have been a lot of losses. There have been a lot of chefs who didn't make it through. That we've all seen chefs who maybe have gone down a bad path, and some people have been able to course correct, some people have not, some people have lost their lives and stuff. When you see that happening with somebody, whether they're in your employ or somebody who is a peer to you or something like that, how do you address that? How do you take care of it? If it is somebody who's working for you and you're worried about just how they are, how they're doing, how do you address that?
I mean, I think I've been asked the question by young chefs probably 1,000 times. How have you done it this long? How are you happy?
Yeah.
Because you get pushed on in a lot of different directions. I mean, I love to say to, when I get that when I have that conversation with like a key player in one of our kitchens where they say, hey Paul, can we meet up for coffee? I want to talk to you.
Yep.
You know it's over. And they say, And they all say, I want to open my own restaurant. It's my dream, and I encourage that.
Awesome, actually. I think if they can come to you and say that, that's beautiful.
I encourage that and support them through the process. But I do often say when I hear that the first time, it's like an interview question. What's one of your goals? And I say, be careful what you wish for, because it's good and it's bad. It's really hard and it's not for everyone. But that being said. 9 times out of 10, I mean, the answer is, and we touched on earlier, it's balance. You can't, number one, at a certain point, I love referencing the line in The Deer Hunter, where the guys go in the bar, they're at the wedding, they go in the bar, and the Green Berets sitting at the bar, and he's got a shot in front of him, and they're like, who is it, De Niro, Christopher Walken, and I always forget the name of the third actor, but they're incredible, and they're like all drunk. They're wearing their tuxedos. Their ties are messed up. And they're like, you are Nam, man. Fucking A, tell us about Nam. And the guy just sort of looks over and he goes, fuck it. Like that. And they're like, what? And then he does it again. And I that's like one of my things that I go to. It's like sometimes you just got to say, you can't control everything. Fuck it.
Yeah.
You got to let it go. You got to breathe it out. And I also love to say that one of my strongest weapons is denial.
So what does that mean to you?
It just means like sometimes you just have to be like, I don't see it, I don't care about it. You just have to wash it out of your mind. The yogic thing, like breathe in really positive and breathe out really negative. Because if you let every single little thing, I mean, we all want every meal to be perfect. We all want everyone to be happy. There are people that don't want to be happy. There are details that are out of your control. When sewage is spewing out of the sump pump in the basement in the middle of service, it's spewing out of the sump pump, and somebody's got to take care of it. And so it's not a perfect world, and we're all a little OCD, and we're all perfectionists to a certain degree. A lot of people more so than others. And I feel like as I get older, I get more OCD. Like things have to be in the right place for me. It drives my wife crazy. But that being said, you also have to just be able to walk away, be able to go home and listen to music, have other passions. Record chopping is a great. It was my escape when I'd do bad. That's how my record collection started. When I'd do bad on a math test in college, I'd go out and buy a bucket full of records. And the same thing is true now. Like when I'm having a bad day, I'll veer from one restaurant and I'll go to Reckless and I'll record shop for an hour and I'll walk out with 10 records. And
it feels great, right?
Yeah, it feels great.
I miss that. I haven't gone and sorted through stacks for a long time, but I really
love it.
Oh God, there was a place in Vermont that I used to go to, and it was just such a haven. I would go there, and I like a particular genre of British indie pop, and they had such a trove there, and it was amazing. But I was a jerk and told somebody else about it, and they went and bought everything up, and then it was it's like a ramp patch. You gotta leave something there for somebody else. But I remember the particular way my hands would get dirty going through bins.
Yeah, I remember one of the first albums in that situation that I bought. You mentioned British indie pop. I don't think it's pop, but it was Power, Corruption, and Lies by New Order. That album with the flowers on the cover.
Okay, can I tell you
that
something?
is such a great album.
Okay, so we have this place upstate. We had, before I met him more than 20 years ago, my husband bought this Gothic stone Episcopal church from 1854. It's amazing, and it's their weekend haven. The rectory next door to it became available last year, and we bought that too.
Holy cow.
We were thinking about how to decorate it, and he's like, wouldn't it be great to have like a floral in the hallway, something like the cover of Power, Corruption, and Lies? And I was like, why don't we just do that? We got the wallpaper made into a mural, and so we have that as that is the hallway is the cover of Power, Corruption,
That's
and
hilarious.
Lies.
And also music in a rectory, the sound.
Oh yeah.
I think about, it's like the concept for Big Star. It's argued, but how that, I worked for Rick Bayless, I cooked Mexican food, but my wife and I used to have these epic parties for the staff of the restaurants, and we just had Blackbird and Avec, and I had these big old clipped speakers called Hearsay, but they're loudspeakers, big paper cone, really open, airy sound, old school horn, mid-range, and tweeter, and I would drag those out in the backyard, and I would DJ for the parties, and it was a potluck, and they were legendary parties, super fun.
Oh my God, I love it.
And when we got that gas station space, it was like, number one, we don't want to fuck it up. We don't want to make it something it's not. And I want that like airy, beautiful, light sound in there. It's like the rectory sound. It's like little echoey, just beautiful. Be a great place to listen to music.
Oh my gosh, the church sanctuary is because it's got like 30-foot ceilings, and my husband's such an audiophile, so listening to New Order in there is such an incredible thing. I got to see them live a few years ago with Johnny Marr in Vegas outside, and it was one of the best shows I've ever seen. It's such a thing. They're still touring. Bernard's voice isn't the same, but it's still great.
Awesome.
But you have to have these things.
You have to.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I think everyone does. I have a lot of them.
It's so important because there is that mentality. You meet some of the chefs and they're like, how dare you do anything other than, cook until you fall down, and then
come on, man.
It's not healthy. It's not good. You and I have both definitely seen people fall into that and not make it through, and it's
certainly not for me.
No, but I want to. You continue to have this really great career and stuff, and remain relevant. That's the thing. Is like you have managed to remain relevant, and I think that's the secret sauce that people really want to know about. So, how is it that you have managed to do this things this for having all this? You've never closed a restaurant, have you?
We reconcepted a restaurant recently, but that was the first one. How do you
still continue to do that? Because I know so many publications. I mean, I'm guilty of this. All food publications are guilty of this.
New
now next? And how do you have these places that remain in place and you open new things and people are excited about it?
Yeah, I think we're fortunate enough that we have a good formula. Mm-hmm. It's not a formula, and it's a good formula all at the same time. But we have a great collaborative team. My business partner, Terry Alexander, owns this bar called Danny's Tavern in Chicago, which is one of the before I knew him, I used to go there, and it's one of the coolest neighborhood bars in the history of the world. But he's a barman. He's a restaurant man. He's got a really incredible perspective. He's got great taste in music, and we go see rock shows together. Donnie has this incredible sense of style, and he has his perspective and his ideas about hospitality. My business partner, Edward Shaitan, came from Romania. We were just upstairs, and the gal looked at his wine list from our newest place, Cafe Concal, and she's like, this wine list is incredible. And we're like, he's the guy that does the Avec wine list and has been doing it for 15 years.
Oh, wow.
And it's really, we have an island wine series that we do there. I'm getting off the track, but and then there's Thomas Schlescher, who is our architect, and his wife Claire, our graphic designer, Jason Pickelman. We've worked together with this team, and everyone's input is a gigantic and important part of the final product.
Yeah.
And we trust people, and we trust Jason did this incredible graphic for Cafe Concal, and it's like the menu paper is this beautiful watercolor, like washed out watercolor. They look like clouds. I just saw it the first time. I was like, I love this. I'm insane about it. And so I think, someone will propose an idea, and we'll work the idea over in every way, shape, and form. We'll work it and the design that Thomas puts forth gets worked and worked and worked, and we go over every detail of it to make it what we think is going to ultimately be successful. So for till now, that's been our plan, and now my tune is, in all honesty, I think that you're born with a finite bucket of creativity, and it's due to outside stimuli, like all the shit that pushes on you, all the pressures, life, money, the president, all that stuff, our planet, all that stuff that weighs so heavily on me personally, limits my creativity. It's like, I can't think about that, man. I can't think about anything. The planet's burning up,
right?
And so
you gotta fill the battery back up.
Yeah, so that's where great collaborative relationships with people that come up through our kitchens and in other kitchens and in other restaurants is so important. And we're a collaborative community in Chicago, and with us, I think I can poke and prod, and I think I still have great ideas, but I have a lot of shit to do every day. And so if there's a young chef that's working for me, to empower them and say, hey, this is the way I see it, run with it.
Yeah.
I was just talking with Alec Walker, who's the chef at Cafe Concal, and he's like, yeah, Paul will be like, hey, man, I think you should do this. And this would be cool with it, but if you want to do it differently, go for it. And I always leave him that window to interpret it in his way. And I know there are times where I'll say something, he'll try it and be like, ugh, this sucks. And it's not a complete vision. It's something. It's a starting point. And so I think I think that's important. I learned from working with Rick Bayless how important it is every day to continually sort of squeeze the towel, if you will. Look at every aspect of your restaurant and continually improve upon it. Make sure it's fresh. Look at things with eyes wide open and say, how can I make this better? I've taught the lesson to so many chefs. Like, you're cooking on a line with someone and you see the cat next to you do something, and you're like, oh, that doesn't feel right. And you're like, it's okay though. And I learned a long time ago, you got to be like, hey, that's not the way we want to do it.
And do it with that emotion. And
it'll be much better if you do it like this, and this is why. And I think consistency, I think a high level of hospitality, I think all those things combined, it's not easy. It's a ton of work. But ultimately, it's incredible relationships with partners, with key team members, with regular guests in our community. I think it's being passionate, for me, being like truly passionate about food. Like, we're not looking at like what's going to be the next cool thing. We're looking at what we're really excited about because it's delicious and or culturally significant or any of those things, And I think our chemistry that we have as partners and as a company sort of promotes that.
I love that. It really comes across the sort of like team mentality of this. And I'm thinking again of this meal that I had that Marcantu put together, where it was like this Voltron of like great Chicago chefs and their dishes. And I felt so spoiled because I got to have I still remember Mindy Siegel made this savory pot pie. I'm trying to remember exactly what Matt Merges made that night because I was sort of deer in the headlights. I can't believe this food is happening to me. And he became one of my favorite chefs in the world that night.
He's one of my favorite chefs too.
He's so good. I got to go to you show in Las Vegas, and he happened to be there that night. And it was such a weird thing seeing who I think of as a Chicago guy in Las Vegas. It was such a weird thing. But
He's a spectacular, intense, focused human being. I mean, you look at. I know we're not here to talk about Matt, but I think 15 years in Charlie Trotter's kitchen.
Yeah.
And man, you want to hear some stories. Holy mackerel!
Oh,
There's a memoir there. A memoir of memoirs. But, Matthias and I founded a group called Pilot Light in Chicago. We worked together.
Yes, talk about that.
Yeah.
'Cause I think it's so great.
It was an interesting happening. Matt called me on the phone and he said, hey, my daughters go to Disney 2 Magnet School in Chicago. I really want to introduce some food curriculum in the classrooms. Would you be willing to do that with me? And he's like the old school guy. You're like, yeah, anything you want. I mean, we're great friends, and plus, it's really needed. And at the same time, I was invited to go cook on the White House lawn for.
Which regime was this?
Michelle Obama, President Michelle Obama, for the Let's Move campaign. And so a group of us cooked on the lawn, and then she had invited 800 culinary professionals to D.C. to talk about.
Remember this happening? Yeah.
Yeah, to talk about what they're doing in schools around the country. And I kind of walked away from there. There was 7 or 8 Chicagoans, and we all had a beer after. And I was kind of scratching my head, and I was like, people are doing great stuff. I don't know how that translates to me. And so I got back and organized an event in Chicago where I reached out to as many of the organizations that were working with children in schools as I could, and sort of did this meet and greet, invited all the chefs in Chicago and said, come learn what all these organizations are doing and see how you can help. That morning, Matt and I met before that for coffee. We sat through the event, and afterwards we said, nobody's focusing on curriculum. Nobody's using curriculum as a tool to teach kids the Common Core subjects, not about nutrition and about food, although that comes with that, but using food to get kids excited about learning math, science, social studies, all that stuff.
It's all of those things. It's a lens for every one of those things.
Yeah, it's everything. Food relates to everything. And so we started 10 years ago. Matthias, myself, one of the most talented chefs in Chicago, a young man named Jason Hamill, who has a restaurant called Lula.
Yes.
We started, and Jason went to Brown. He's brilliant. He's a real visionary, both in the food world and in the food education world. And we've grown to the point where we have an executive director. We have a fairly large staff. We have an executive board, which I've been relegated to. But it's an incredible organization that we evolved it. We were actually cooking in the schools for almost 5 years, and we had chefs joining us. We developed curriculum with the teachers together, and we got to a point where we figured out that chefs are not the right guys to depend on to grow this program. And so we came up with the brilliant idea, not we, but people on our board came up with the idea of creating an institute that teaches teachers how to teach our programs in schools. And so, and the best, we've formed a cohort, the best of those teachers stay in the cohort and continue to develop lessons with us. So they have their eyes on that lens. They understand what works in the classroom. They're trained in writing curriculum. And so this group is growing. And like I said, we got our first USDA grant this year.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah,
huge.
we do an event every year called Feed Your Mind. It's November 1st, where we get the greatest chefs in Chicago, all the big names, to cook for tables of 20. It sells out super fast every year. We raise a lot of money.
What's the ticket price for that?
You know what? I'm ashamed to say I don't know. I want to say maybe it's $250 per person.
Sounds like a bargain, honestly.
But that being said, right now we touch about 5,000 children a year, and we have a growth plan in place that's going to touch a lot more over time. And for me, I always go back to, there are a lot of problems in Chicago. It's like planned segregation, crime, all the murders and stuff that happen. Really, the only way, all the problems in the world right now.
Horror,
the planet burning up. You got to teach children about the importance of all these issues, and ultimately we're making better people.
Yeah.
That's the way we look at it. We're not making foodies. We're not. I mean, we like teach affirmative action. We teach conscience. We teach all those things, and I feel the same way about a generation of cooks that have worked in our kitchens. We're trying to teach them that giving back to the community is so paramount to our success. It's not advertising. It's giving back to the community. We have we organize field trips where the whole staff of the Publican goes to the Chicago Food Depository and does a field trip where we give back to the community. And so that's a real defining characteristic of our company. A lot of the chefs, volunteer and help out with Pilot Light and other things that they're passionate about. And so I think, full circle, all that is what continues to keep our company and make us relevant. Keep our company relevant.
That's gorgeous. That makes me really happy. So I have a few questions that I ask everybody who comes through here because I love finding out people's different takes on that. So we're going to have a little Oprah moment.
Oprah.
Yes. Well, because she brought the whole, I don't remember who the person was who actually did The Secret, but I believe though in the power of figuring out the thing that you want, saying it out loud so other people can help you with it. What is the selfish thing that you want for yourself that you can speak out into the universe now? And maybe somebody listening to this can be like, oh, I can help them get there. Long-term, short-term can be anything, but it can be selfish.
Oh man, that cannot be. I hate to go John Lennon on you, but peace.
Yeah. I mean, internal, external, all of the above.
You can all help with peace, right?
Take a breath. It's not hard to not be a dick to someone. I think it starts at that level.
Like I've just witnessed some road rage recently. People they're animals. It's like,
yeah.
That reminds me of a quick story.
Yeah, bring it.
I used to, when I had my first cooking job, I had at the time I had a 1965 VW microbus.
Oh, hell yeah.
I had a ponytail too, but.
What color was the bus?
It was two-tone green.
Okay.
It was, the bottom was, I forget what they called it. The top was called sand green. It was almost white, but it was green. Mm-hmm. It was a beautiful, beautiful vehicle. But anyways, I was at an intersection and I was making a left-hand turn off of Wells Street onto LaSalle in Chicago, and I was the third car in the stack, and it was a beautiful summer day. I'm not wearing, I'm driving barefoot, of course. I know I'm creating a real hippy-dippy picture. I'm a fat guy with a crew cut now. But I'm making a left-hand turn, and the guy that's waiting to go in the other direction has got like a 7 Series Beamer, power suit on, black curly hair. He's like probably a trader, really pumped up. And, I'm probably listening to the Feelies, and I make the left-hand turn way after the light has turned red, and the guy just goes berserk, like his head's going to explode. He's yelling at me, and we make eye contact, and I just shoot him the bird. And I say, just go fuck yourself. And so I pull over. I look in my rearview mirror because I'm like, this guy's coming after me. And he zigzags the 7 Series Beamer, does an illegal U-turn. He's hot on my tail,
God.
A block away. I pull over. I open the door, I get out, no shoes on, and I walk up to the guy and I go, dude, if you don't simmer down, you're going to have a freaking heart attack. Take it easy, man. And the guy just looked at me and he froze because he was going to kill me.
Yeah.
He froze and he said, you're right, man. Got back in his car, closed the door, and drove away. Swear to God. I mean, it was like self-preservation, and the guy was a giant musclehead. I was really scared.
Oh my God, so he might have been like roided up?
I think he was I think he was roided up, but I don't know why I told that story.
My former colleague Sarah LaTrent and I'm actually going to see her tonight. We have a thing JBCM, which stands for Just Be Cool, Man. It works in a lot of scenarios.
It would solve a lot of problems.
It would. Oh my gosh! So, what is your comfort food?
I mean, everyone probably says it, but I love roast chicken.
It is really, and would you make it? Would you want somebody to, Waxman comes to your house and makes?
That's okay. No, I'm happy to make it. I love making roast chicken.
Do you ever take it home from the restaurant or?
No.
Okay.
Make it at home.
Nice. Same way that you do it at Publican, or?
Same way that I do it in the Cooking for Good Times book.
People pick up a copy of Cooking for Good Times.
I'm not being that guy, but it was. Started as Joel Robichon's grandmother's roast chicken recipe.
Oh my God, that's not going to be bad at all.
And over the 10 or 12 years that I've been making it, it's morphed into my roast chicken recipe. Similarities, but I do some things differently.
I can't wait to make this. Oh God,
it's easy.
I love making roast chicken, and it's such an act of love.
Yeah, in the roasting pan, you coarse chop up a whole lemon and
Yeah.
do half a head of a garlic split horizontally, and you put a little water in there, and then all the butter and all the olive oil that you slather all over the chicken kind of leaks in there and mixes with the water and the garlic, and the lemons get burnt, and it creates this incredible action in the pan that it's a good recipe.
That sounds really, really good. I am making that this weekend.
Nice.
What is the last meal that you had that made you emotional?
Oh, man. That's a really difficult question.
It's funny with these questions, which people find are the harder ones. And
I can't answer that.
Yeah.
It's been a while, maybe.
yeah, if it comes back to you,
Yeah,
we
let
can
me keep
visit
thinking
it.
about it. Oh, you know what? Every fall I go up to my cabin to musky fish, and there's a place called Anglers, and they have a Friday night fish fry.
Oh,
and,
God, like a Catholic style, like...
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And they serve baked beans with the fried fish, which I'm a baked bean-aholic. But they serve a fish that is not prized. I mean, everyone wants walleye.
Yeah.
But they serve northern pike, and it's kind of gamey and incredibly delicious. And it sort of harks back to like an early childhood memory. My dad had a delicatessen, and the guy named Billy Argovich that repaired the refrigeration had a cabin up in Wisconsin, and I was there as a kid, and Billy's son was wading in the shallows and lunged into the water and hurled out a huge northern pike with his hands.
Oh, wow.
That's of note, but really what's of note is his dad butchered it and cut it into these nice little cubes and breaded it and fried it, and it was the most delicious. I may have been 4 years old, but it's so ingrained in my mind, and I like more. Just keep bringing. Like I loved green beans as a kid. I loved fried fish after that first time that I had it.
Yeah.
And so it's the second time that I've gone to Anglers to have the northern pike specifically, and it makes me pretty emotional. Like, this is so good. I can't even believe it.
My God, I love like a Friday fish fry. Like, grew up Catholic, and they would have that during Lent, especially. And they had mac and cheese, the thickest tartar sauce ever. And oh my God, I love it
that's
so
it.
much. What is the last meal that somebody cooked for you in their home?
Could it be my home? My wife cooks for me
Nope.
all the time.
It's got to be somebody else's home. People are afraid to cook for chefs, so chefs don't get cooked for.
Again, I'm the Northwoods are a big part of my life right now, but
I love that.
we have these great friends, Brian and Susan, who are fascinating people. Susan's from Jordan, Brian's from Presque Isle, Wisconsin, and her mother has taught her. She's a great Middle Eastern cook, and they come over for when I cook Japanese food. We'll have them over a few times over the course of the time we spend up there, and they invited us over, and probably in addition to really great, the meze section where you kind of hang out.
Love.
And another cool thing is Brian and a buddy actually harvest lake ice.
What?
Yeah, I mean that's where ice came from. It came from
Yeah.
lakes, and they're into the old traditions, and so they'll cut a giant chunk out of ice. So up at our cabin now, I have for my whiskey, I have a giant chunk of lake ice in the freezer, and I just crack a chunk off with an ice pick, and it's alarmingly incredible. It makes you want to drink more whiskey than you normally would.
I really like whiskey.
But in addition to the great meze section, and the whole meal was wonderful, the lake ice in the cocktail was pretty spectacular.
Oh, I love that as a detail. That's such a beautiful thing. So I think this question is tailor-made for you. Which living musician who you haven't cooked for who would you want to cook for, and what would you cook for them?
Wow. Living musician.
Yeah, I had to narrow it down, or everybody's throwing back.
I know that Willie is alive. I've never cooked for Willie Nelson.
You would not be the only person to say Willie on this podcast.
And I was also going to say, I think Herbie Hancock is still alive.
Yeah.
And I'm a big Herbie Hancock fan.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what I would cook. It really doesn't. It would honestly be something simple.
Yeah.
Hopefully it would be in the summer at my house, and I could pull a lot of stuff out of the garden.
Yeah.
That's super fresh and simple. That's That would be it. I have a rotisserie on my yard in the grill. I might rotisserie a big chunk of meat. That's always fun. But it doesn't matter.
Yeah, Willie, if you're listening.
Yeah.
So Willie and Dolly come up a lot.
Really?
Yeah.
I like Dolly a lot. I also like Snoop Dogg a lot.
I'm trying to remember if Snoop Dogg has come up, but he's such a food person, and I love that. And I feel like if you wanted to cook for Snoop Dogg, you could absolutely cook for Snoop Dogg.
I don't know about that, but
oh my gosh, I hope that happens for you. And final question: you have 5 uninterrupted minutes for self-care. What do you do?
5 interrupted minutes.
Yeah, just know you're everything's taken care of at the restaurant. Like, you don't have to be looking at your phone.
It's got to be 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Your quickie thing, so people can think like, oh, maybe I can do that too. You can go. I'll give you 10.
I mean, honestly, the biggest self-care thing for me, and it's not a 5-minute thing, has been exercise.
Yeah. Any particular kind?
All different kinds.
Mm-hmm.
Just healthful eating and exercise. I go to a gym in Chicago and do cardio and do just sort of a functional array of fitness things. And, that would be back to our discussion about mental health and kitchens. So many of the people in our kitchens, I'm like, man, exercise is an incredible thing, and it can just chase away so many demons. Mm-hmm. And don't drink. That combination, don't drink and exercise, are incredible together.
Do you know about the Commodore Run Club?
Mm-mm.
This is so great. So Philip Spear, who has been super public about his struggles with addiction and stuff, and he actually had him on the podcast recently. This new restaurant he has in Austin, Commodore, like they got the team together and they have a running club.
Oh, that's awesome.
Of people, so it's for sobriety and exercise, and I think it's a pretty great thing.
That's great. My answer to the question is, I too am a colossal audiophile. Mm-hmm. Like have been cultivating my gear for feels like a century. But I would play a record, and there's a lot of ones. I think and it's probably right at about 5 minutes, but there's a song by Bill Evans, the late great Bill Evans, called Peace Peace, Piecepeace, Peace Peace. It's one of the most tranquil, beautiful things that I've ever heard. And I mean, talk about like an incredibly troubled individual with tons of addiction problems. But it's the perfect song. Oh. So that's what I'd play.
I think the whole message of all this is peace. Whether you're yelling at or roided up like finance dude, or listening to some Bill Evans, I think that's a pretty great way to go. Thank you so much for coming in.
Yeah, an honor.
And if people want to find you on social media, they can.
I'm on Instagram at Publican, I believe.
Okay.
At Chef Publican, I don't even know. I'm such a loser. They can just email me.
But they can come to, again, give us a laundry list of the restaurants.
They could. Laundry list of importance, www.pilotlightchefs.org. Mm-hmm. You could learn about the organization and start a similar one of your own and change our world. Number 2 would be One Off Hospitality is the name of our company. You can just Google search that and see all the restaurants. Mm-hmm.
And then let's tell you some books here. Is it out yet? Is it
came out.
Okay.
You didn't see the awesome piece in the Wall Street Journal last Saturday?
I did not.
It's a feature.
Oh, hey.
I'm such a name dropper, but it was about cooking for good times.
Beautiful.
And that one came out October 15th.
Okay, because I'm so used to getting cookbooks and like, oh, when's this out? Oh, April of next year or something like that. So people.
So we're behind the 8 ball. We got to get it to you sooner.
Go to your independent bookseller.
Absolutely.
And is there a bookstore in Chicago that you especially?
Yeah, Sandmeyer. Yeah. Go to Sandmeyer. I hope they have it, Sandmeyer. They will.
Get it. And if it's such a beautiful thing, and I really hope people cook from it. I know I'm going to make that chicken.
Awesome.
Are there any baked beans in it?
No baked beans in the book.
That'll be your next book. Is a baked bean book.
I'm 2 and done. No more Publican cookbooks. That's going to be for all the kids. The cookbooks. Greg Wade and Ryan Pfeiffer and Perry Hendricks and all the great chefs in the company are hopefully going to. Erling Wubauer are going to do cookbooks next.
Go out and get that Dana Cree book as well.
Her ice cream book is.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
It's great.
Yeah, find anybody in Publican's empire. Go buy their book, eat at their restaurants, all this stuff. But thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Oh my gosh, and thank you to our producers Jennifer Martinick and Hallie Tarpley. I pronounced it right this time. Thank you to Douglas Wagner for our delightful theme song. If you want to find more about Communal Table, oh my gosh, you can go to wherever any of this stuff is streaming. And you know what helps? If you give us a star rating or write a review or any of that kind of stuff, it helps us pop up in the algorithm and more people can find us and listen to it. And if you want to talk to me about who you want to hear from, stuff you want to hear about, I'm easy to find. I'm on Twitter at Kitten with a Whip, pretty responsive on there. And it's, I want to keep having these conversations, and that it helps an awful lot. You can also go to foodandwine.com, and especially if you go to foodandwine.com/FWPro, sign up for the Food and Wine Pro newsletter. It's full of all kinds of tidbits about the business and also about taking care of yourself. Thank you so much, and take care of yourself till the next time. Go make a roast chicken.